African American community for over 40 years and worldwide at WOLDCnews.com. Information is power with Carmiece Graves on 1450 WOL. The views and opinions of the following show do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of News Talk 1450 WOL, Radio 1 Incorporated, or their management. Good morning and welcome to the Carmiece Graves
Good
Show.
morning.
Get
Welcome
ready
to the
get
Carmiece
great
Graves Show.
information on knowing your rights on estate planning,
Sorry, a little dark,
bankruptcy,
guys.
divorce,
I'm
alimony,
out of
and much more.
my
Now,
natural
for today's
element.
show, here's attorney Carmiece Graves.
Good morning. Welcome to the Carmiece Graves Radio Show. I am here with you today. It is the week of Thanksgiving, and in this traditional show, I like to make sure that I spend some time giving thanks and appreciation to my loved ones, my clients, my colleagues, just being alive and being here another year with you today. So, today's show, I got a call last week. So, the show is always based on calls that I get from my clients, interesting conversations I have. I'm practicing family law, bankruptcy, and estate planning in the Washington, D.C. area. And I really help my clients when it comes to family law empower themselves to liberate themselves from miserable marriages and toxic relationships so they could get back to enjoying life. Now, I had a call from a father, and sometimes, I regularly represent fathers in family law matters, but sometimes get a sense that maybe my dads feel that they may not get adequate representation. Maybe they don't get a fair shake before the judiciary. So I wanted to go through that a little bit because, again, what I do is these comments and the topics are based on my areas of practice and maybe some conversations to me that I find a little like shocking, like, oh, wow, I didn't know you felt like that, or I didn't realize that this was an issue. So I figured I will address it. So today we are going to talk about fathers' rights in court and what we should be looking out there. Also, I'm going to give some tips about it's the holiday season. It's a high time for domestic violence. A lot of family structures are put to the test when it's time to come together in whatever regard we've determined to be appropriate for us during this holiday. And I would start off by saying is, we are practicing social distancing, but we're also practicing emotional wellness. So there's going to be a balance. And as human beings, we are social creatures, and being completely isolated by oneself for extended periods of time, we're going to have to manage that and be safe as we deal with the pandemic. So people are making safe decisions, probably keeping the family gathering smaller and in a more nuclear fashion. But if you are home by yourself and you don't have a lot of family and friends, make sure you're getting on that Zoom, make sure that you're connecting, making sure that you have your social network plugged in the safest manner possible. Also, in the second half of the show, I'm going to talk a bit about maybe I'll go into bankruptcy a little bit. I'm a little concerned. As I said last week, we've gotten through the election. Oh, wait, first off, I have to give a congratulations to the United States from Ethiopia. I was on the line yesterday with a client of mine from Ethiopia, and she said to me, we start the call, and she says, congratulations. And I'm like, what happened? What's going on? She says, congratulations to America on the election. And it seems like the world is very proud to see that our democratic, Constitution works, our democratic society, our government, the process really does work. I think is a great demonstration around the world that we weren't sleeping, we were waiting for our day. And that day came and we stepped up, we got to the polls, we really we made sure that our vote was counted, and the process is moving along a little bit more slowly than usual. But, we're dealing with the administration we had, and we could expect for it to kind of go a bit slow, but we are moving along with certifying. And I'm really appreciative of this voting process and those who are in charge of it, and how they are getting beyond their partisanship and realizing they have a really, big call of duty to make sure that they respond to, what they have been charged to do, and making sure that this election go well. And then all the people who have been the watchdogs, who have been making sure that it goes right, where someone wants to go left, and that would undermine democracy and undermine the vote of the people. All of those, voter protection advocates who have been working long and hard to make sure that we have voters out to the poll for this election, and will continue to have voters out in the midterm election, because we still have big issues that we still have pretty much a gridlock, possibly, hopefully not, in Congress. Last week we talked about legislation and some of the concerns we have coming out of the bankruptcy bar for mortgage holders. So keep an eye on that. Keep listening for that. Get a consultation. Call me early if things are not coming back online and you need additional time. You are going to be required, if you have taken, uh, if you have elected protections under the CARES Act, you are going to be required come March to jump right back online and start paying that mortgage. And if you need additional time, because I have a feeling that banks may be a little aggressive with foreclosures. So if you're needing additional time, that's when you reach out to me or someone in your area that can afford you additional time if you need it to get back on track as it relates to paying your mortgage. Keeping your property is number one. It's the biggest asset that usually, defines wealth. We have a lot of discussion in our community oftentimes about the wealth gap, which not necessarily is, equivalent to the income gap. Wealth gap is pretty much, if you think about it, is what you keep. Income can be spent on disposable goods. You can dispose of your money easily, and those things that are perishable, that no one gives any value to, pocketbook, shoes, you know, just groceries, just things that you need to live. And as opposed to investing money in real property, your 401k, your portfolio, your investments, the real estate that you have, and making sure those are the things that are calculated in your wealth. So when you're looking at wealth, it's your assets minus how much you owe for those assets, and the net sum of those is your wealth. So protecting that home, that primary residence, you've already gone through the trouble of getting qualified, of going through the financing. It's not even easy to find a house that you like and love, and maybe you've been there for a while with your family, raising your kids. It's all set up in terms of your lifestyle, where the kids are going to school. We're hoping eventually we will be back to school and they'll be out the house, and giving you guys some relief in terms of, and then having their social life, put back together in some regard. So just really look out for that. I have not seen anything. I think the states can, invoke different rules. Look for that locally. But I know here, at least on the Maryland side, we're looking at March, unless there's some future legislation to come, which I'm optimistic may happen, hopefully. But just look for it, because as you hear about even President-elect Biden talking about what we need to do, it's, and that Congress needs to come together to pass a relief bill. Listen to what's in that, because I'm hearing the extension of unemployment benefits, which absolutely is needed. There's a need. But what I'm not hearing is anything regarding, the extension of the mortgage relief. And maybe I don't know anything. I haven't heard anything about student loan debt protections, but that should be easy enough for them to invoke. But the quandary is, for people who have, investment properties, who are not receiving, rent from their tenants, and maybe still have a mortgage. You are definitely, the how much they'll infringe upon those rights. Um, there's a balance to be struck there. So let's keep an eye out for that. Take early action. That means pick up that phone, give me a call. If you need a referral for an attorney, if you're not in the DMV area, I'm happy to provide that. And if you need just to talk through the process to understand what it looks like, because I'll tell you, I think it's a bigger mental barrier than not, because the actual process, I mean, going through something like a divorce is pretty confrontational sometimes if you guys have not been able to work out those issues. But bankruptcy, people want you to win, and those are your rights, and we're ready to defend those rights and make sure that you get the relief that you need to keep your wealth in your family. So, and I just don't, I want you to be in your home. It's not even about generational wealth. This is about security and safety and your well being, and it's important. So, if it's stressing you out, if you're starting to lose sleep about it, that means take action and give me a call. And let's work on that together. And you don't have to go through that by yourself. So, don't quietly suffer in any regard, whether it's relationships, whether it's finances. Don't suffer in silence. Get support and help. And that's where my firm, the Carmiece Graves Law Firm, comes in, that I have been called to serve in that regard, as it relates to your debt relief and helping you get through relationship issues. So let's talk about today's topic. So I got a call last week from a gentleman who has a custody issue, and he was doing his diligence and asked me some basic questions. And I've heard this from others about feeling that the courts are biased against fathers, and then secondly, whether I, as a woman attorney, was open to representing men. And it made me say, huh? Like, what? Like, okay, so maybe we should unpack this a little bit, because as an attorney, we don't really see it like that. So I'm going to walk through that, kind of, sharing the lens of maybe how it looks behind the scene as an attorney, as a woman representing a man in a litigation, and maybe unpack some of those things for you. So let's start with me, and then we'll get to the courts and what you're looking for in terms of an attorney. And another question I'm going to answer today is, people ask me a lot of times, what is my success rate? So let's talk about how you first can gauge success in a family law matter, because it's a bit different. It's not a clear winner and loser here when it comes to family law. And I don't really think that's really the lens, at least for me. And I think most family law attorneys would agree. If there's any on the line that would like to comment, say anything, that's fine. And if you have questions, the line is open. You guys can call. A lot of times people are shy to call, but the number is 1-800-450-7876 if you have a question and want to join this live conversation on air. So, winning and losing in family law, it's a reorganization of a family. Okay. So we're not going in there to win or lose, but you can, if you want to put a win or lose on it. How I gauge it, my success in family law, is whether I was able to accurately give you a legal assessment of what you're entitled to under the law and what you could reasonably expect from a litigation outcome. So we set the stage, we do the consultation, you tell me what's going on, I ask questions that are specific to your case, and what I do is then, using my experience, my knowledge, my skill set, I tell you, well, based on what you've told me, provided that that's everything that I need to know, and it's honest, true, and correct, based on my experience coming before the courts, obviously qualifying that, hey, I'm not the judge on the bench, but they're pretty consistent. And if these are the factors and they come out as you say, this is what we can anticipate in terms of child support. We can run calculators to figure out what those numbers are based on what you know about the finances of you and your mate and expenses and needs of your child. Two, the property. What property do you have? Doing analysis of understanding what's marital property and what your entitlements may be there. Again, just going through the different areas of a divorce, separation, if you're married, and child custody and child support if you're not and you have kids in common, or just if you got married and there's property and you need to, dissolve the marriage. Winning is being able to give you that roadmap and then produce those results. Now, I can't change facts. If there's some, issues and there's some bad facts in there, I'll tell you the truth. I'm not selling wolf tickets. I'm not overselling the position. What I'm doing is letting you know, well, based on this is what the court more than likely would do. So I think we're doing a check in with traffic and weather. So stay right here tuned into the Carmiece Grace radio show. We're going to do traffic and weather. When we come back, we're going to keep walking through what does it look like to obtain success in a family law matter and whether you as a father get a fair shake before the courts. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. I know the lighting is a little interesting, but I'm outside today because it's just that kind of day.
There are everyday actions to help prevent.
So we're going to continue this discussion because I think it's really important, and I'll go give you, on Facebook, I'll give you, a little bit of a cheat sheet here. I think that you have to be careful about how you exit a relationship to preserve your rights. So I think it's about preserving your rights, and I'm going to talk about some of the things that have kind of shaped this system in a way that may make it seem like it's a bit biased. I want to go through what the biases are because there's biases on both sides. There's biases against moms and there's biases against dads. And we're going to talk about them and what you need to know to make sure that you have structured your life such that you are preserving your parental rights and looking at what the court will consider in determining a shared custody arrangement, a sole custody arrangement on behalf of dad. It happens all the time. Dads get, we're going to go through it. So, but I think there's some planning that needs to be done. All right, welcome back to the Carmiece Graves radio show. You're tuned in to Carmiece T. Graves in the Maryland, D.C. area, where I practice family law, bankruptcy, and estate planning. So today we're getting into fathers' rights, whether the courts are biased against dads, whether dads go in there and get hosed and, it's all about moms. So we're going through that. So the last segment before the break, we talked about what is winning or losing. For me as an attorney is doing a thorough and accurate legal analysis and producing on those results. That's winning or losing. When I say this is what I think more than likely is going to happen, qualifying whether there's any exceptions or things you didn't tell me, and also qualifying that I'm not the judge. But more than likely, family law is pretty well settled, and we deal with these issues day in and day out. And you should know and have some comfort that these are your rights and entitlements, and then it's my job to go get them. So when it comes to that level of analysis, I think my success rate is extremely high. That I really can tell you, it's not usually the case that we're going before a court and we're completely surprised and I'm up there talking about, I don't know what's wrong with that judge, I don't know what the judge did. That can happen. Okay, it can happen, but more than likely, it should be an anomaly and not just a crapshoot. Okay, so when you get through with the consultation, and that's what you pay for, you should come out of that meeting with a good, solid understanding, good or bad, what's to be expected. Okay. So now let's talk about biases. For my listenership, on the radio, on the break, we were talking about biases. So there's a couple biases, and I'm just going to talk about custody, right? There's a couple biases on both sides. Imagine this is a court. For you, it may be your first time dealing with this. Hopefully, it's not a regular part of your life coming to court and dealing with these issues. So for you, it's your life. It's the first time you've been living in whatever situation you've been living in with the child's mother, and now it's time for parties to separate, divorce, move on. And it's overwhelming. It's big. It's the reorganization of your family, and you're coming to the court and you're wondering what's going to happen. Let me tell you about the biases on both sides. So, and I'm going to tell you the bias against women because they think that there are none, and there is a big one. A big one for women. A bias that women experience coming into court is blocking dad's access to the child. That's a big no-no. It's a big problem, and the courts move on it aggressively. Overall, I will say the best interest of the child has both healthy parents involved. I don't ever feel like I go into a case and dad's rights are diminished, dad's rights are brushed aside. But what I have seen is that maybe dad has made some decisions, or, and this could be for either parent, that make co parenting more difficult. Okay. And we're going to go through that. And that's why, if you are considering leaving your home where you have been living together with the as a family unit, and you're going to change that structure, you should get a consultation before doing that, especially if you're dad, especially if you haven't been the primary custodian of the child, especially if you want to be the primary custodian or have shared custody. You should get a consultation, because there's some moves that men make sometimes that make it now difficult to maintain the level of access that they most desire. So my short answer is, so here's the bias against dad. So we talked about the bias against mom. Mom's bias is, you are bitter because he don't want you no more. Now all of a sudden he got a new woman and you don't want nobody around your child. Yeah, nobody's trying to hear that. Okay? That's personal. Work it through. I understand it. I understand how difficult that may be, but people, we are used to hearing that, and that's not a valid excuse. That's between you and that man, and you're going to have to work through that in your heart and let this child have access to their father. So that is a big bias. Women don't go into court talking about, I let him see my son. Woo, that is like one of the worst things you could ever say. Dads. Now, what do we have with dads? Running from child support. Now you want to be super dad. You ain't been dad, but now that's the bias against dads, that you weren't an involved parent, and now you want to be extra involved because you've learned that, whoa, child support is calculated based on how much time I spend with the kids. That is the bias against dads. Now, when I say, and I don't know if bias is the right word, but that's the one I'm using. I'm sure there's a better one, but it is something that I navigate, and I think you have to navigate through and know that it's there. And that's why planning is important, making sure that there's a so here's what happens a lot of times, and I'm going to tell you how sometimes it looks like it shakes out unfairly. The court is going to be looking at how you guys have decided to run your household. And they're going to be looking to maintain that to the extent it worked for the child. So if you've made decisions in your household that mom was going to go ahead and take care of, the primary responsibilities of taking care of the kids, and you were going to go off and get the money, it's going to be, I mean, if you're trying to shift that, you need to shift that dramatically before you leave the house, because you're not going to be able to just, they're going to look, because they're thinking from the kid's perspective, who's been taking me to school and who's been making my lunches, who's been, and it's just how you pretty much have decided to run your household. And if you want to change that, I think you need to do some planning before you step on out. So an emotional leave without planning may be detrimental. You got to really think about this, because the court's going to be looking at what had you been doing. So if you were primarily the financial provider and mom was primarily taking care of the kids, they'll say, well, what's wrong with that? And why are we changing it now? Give me a good reason, because these kids are in a go and flow, and the court wants to make sure that they're stabilized and really let y'all go. They take the rest of what y'all have going on in y'all relationship to Jesus. Okay, they're like, look, that's a job for Jesus. I'm here about these kids, and I want them to be as stabilized as possible, because it's devastating to restructure the family to the degree that these kids are going to endure. I would definitely, if this is happening, encourage that you put your kids in therapy so they have support and understanding. For whatever reason, kids take on responsibility for parents breaking up. They take it as their own, something they could have done better. Maybe they hear you guys arguing about access to the kids and what's going to happen and child support, and they, for whatever reason, take that as their fault. So one of the things is, so the court is looking at what's in the best interest of the child. One of the things is, so one, we have, how have you been managing your household? And then if you leave, here's one of the biggest factors I can tell you now. Don't make it such that if you want shared custody that you live now 45 minutes away. That's not going to work, because the court's not going to have a child commuting all that long way just to accommodate that. You want to move 2 counties away because you just don't want to see this person and don't want to run into them ever. You're going to have to think, you're going to have to strategically plan. I would say continue to maintain your daily responsibilities. Do the pickups, do the drop-offs, go to the doctor meet checkups. Be present. Make sure that you have a clear record to show that I have all, because there's dads that are heavily involved in their kids' lives. And for those dads who have been involved and they maintain it such that they're able to easily go in and out of the child's life, they don't live too far, they have a work schedule that supports it. You're not going to come to the court and say, I'm a truck driver, I'm on the road, but I want shared custody. That's going to be a no. So you're going to have to structure your life to be that primary custodian. And I found that the courts are more than happy in supporting you in that regard. So if you have this issue and you need help and you want to walk through it and you're thinking about reorganizing your family structure, I would say give me a call, get a consultation before you make that move. And men are really good about doing that to understand the impacts. You want to preserve your rights, so you're going to have to make it as easy as possible for you and mom to flow in and out of the child's life seamlessly, that it's not a big disruption for the child. So you can't say, I want to move on, and now everything's going to change. Child's going to a new school. Child can't go to their extracurricular activities, and you don't understand why the court says, I'm not doing that. Okay, so it's understanding the court's lens and speaking into that. And we have plenty of fathers, and me personally, I know everybody knows the importance of fathers in a child's life. They provide the sense of safety and security. But that's me. Gotta go, guys. Hopefully you guys are together doing something safe, and you're going to have a great Thanksgiving. I'll be tuned in next week, and we can continue talking about fathers' rights and other good gems that come up along the way. So thanks so much. That's my time for tuning into the Carmiece Grace Radio Show. Thanks so much. If you like this, please like and share my video. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Carmiece Graves Show
Thanks.
with Attorney Carmiece Graves. To reach Attorney Graves, please call 240-573-7153. That's 240-573-7153. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday at 10 a.m.
Thank
right
you.
here on WOL 1450 AM, where information is power.
Right.
This is